This lecture has been made available to you courtesy of the American Numismatic Society.
So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. Today we're joined by a couple familiar faces, Peter van Alfen, the ANS's Chief Curator, and our Director of Data Science, Ethan Gruber, to learn about new developments with our online digital resources. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. So our plan today is to keep this fairly informal, and so if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask the question. Of course, we'll, as always, have a question and answer bit at the end. Uh, the idea here, too, is just to bring to your attention certain recent developments in our online digital resources. And as many of you know, the ANS has long, for decades now, been at the forefront of creating digital resources. Of course, with our online collection catalog, which was initiated almost 30 years ago, if memory serves correctly. And more recently, of course, in fact, with some rather substantial grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, we've been able to build out a number of other online digital resources, mostly focused on the ancient world, on Roman coinage as well as on Greek coinage. But at the same time, we've also been developing a number of other things. So what we would like to do today is just go through some of this and just remind you also of what is available. So I'm going to share my screen momentarily if I can do this. Let's see. So is that working? Can you all see the screen there?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Very good. So if you come to our landing page on our nomisma.org site and go to collections and go to the very bottom to online resources and click on there, you will see about 20 different online resources. And these, of course, are these resources that we've been building over the last decade particularly. Of course, our online digital catalog, MANTIS, is something that is not listed. Well, it is actually right here at the very top, and this is something that we'll be talking about just a moment, as well as the library catalog and the ANS archives. Today, we're mostly going to be focusing, however, on some of our more numismatic-oriented resources. And just to remind you what we have here, there are a number of Roman-oriented resources, such as Coin Hoards of the Roman Republic, the Roman Republic Die Project. There's also Coin Hoards of the Roman Republic, Coinage of the Roman Republic Online, and these are in many ways self-explanatory. And at the same time, we also have a number of resources that fall under the umbrella of the Hellenistic Royal Coinages Project. And this resource right here is in fact an umbrella site that ties together all of the component parts of HRC. And these component parts include, for example, bigger. So we're always trying to find clever acronyms for these, as you can tell. So bigger here is the coins of the Bactrian and Indo-Greek rulers. Also includes ACGO, or the Antigonid coins online, Ptolemaic coins online, Seleucid Coins Online, and Pella, which is a site devoted to the Macedonian kings. At the moment, it mostly focuses on the coinage in the name of Alexander the Great, as well as his father, Philip II. But the intention with Pella has always been to try to extend this all the way back to Alexander the who ruled in the 5th century BC. So all of these, in fact, are still works in progress. And in fact, that is partly why we're having this discussion today, in order to bring you up to date on some of the developments in some of these component parts of HRC, particularly, or Hellenistic Royal Coinages. Now, one thing I also want to bring your attention to is nomisma. And this is a international collaborative project that was initiated here at the ANS roughly 15 years ago by Sebastian Heath and Andy Meadows. Sebastian Heath is a trustee still of the Numismatic Society. Andy Meadows, in the meantime, has moved on to Oxford University. And Nomisma has developed quite extensively in the meantime. So this is very much a international collaborative project. And if you go to the Who We Are tab here, you'll see that there is a scientific steering committee, and this is something that both Ethan and I serve on. And there are also a number of working groups, and you can see working groups for Greek coinage, hoards, iconography, the Iron Age, metals and decorations, medieval, modern, European, Roman provincial, and soon I think we should add something for Byzantine because we'll get to that in a moment. But what Nomisma essentially does is serve as a platform for standardizing a lot of the terms and concepts associated with numismatics that then provide the building blocks for these types of online digital resources and projects. And we are not the only people, in fact, who use these standardized terms and URIs and so forth as building blocks. There are a number of other projects and platforms that also use these, and I'll talk about these a little bit later. But at the same time, Nomisma also serves as sort of a data format exchange platform where a lot of information is funneled through Nomisma from various places to various places. So we really could not do a lot of what we do without Nomisma, nor could a number of other projects that are out there. So this does require actually a fair amount of time, commitment, both on my part and Ethan's and very, very many other people around the world to maintain Nomisma and also to have fairly regular meetings. There is a monthly steering committee meeting where we discuss problems and try to resolve certain things. And then these various working groups also have fairly regular meetings as well to work through more specific problems with each one of these different fields, essentially of numismatics. At the same time, we also try to have a annual in-person meeting, and Ethan and I were just at a meeting that took place in Athens, Greece, where we had our Nomisma meeting and then presented a lot of what we were doing to our Greek colleagues in the hopes of sort of expanding, the group of people who are involved in this, trying to bring more of our Greek colleagues into the fold, as it were, and also assist with any digital projects and resources that they are hoping to build. And at the same time, this also coincided with a computer in archaeology or meeting that was taking place in Athens at the same time, which we also attended. So it was a very productive several days in Athens, both in terms of computer archaeology and digital humanities, but also more specifically on Nomisma per se. So that said, I'm going to turn this over to Ethan momentarily so he can walk you through some of these developments. And these are things that he has been working on quite hard over the course of the last year, particularly. These includes a monograms project that both he and I have been working on, as well as some updates to MANTIS, which is our search function for our collection here. And then also developments with coinhoards.org, which is also a component part um, uh, of HRC, at least initially it was, but this is something that we're trying to expand beyond the Greek world, as it were, ultimately. But there are, in the meantime, some developments there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ethan now, who can walk you through some of these recent developments. So Ethan, all yours. And I'm going to
All
start
right.
sharing my screen so you can share yours.
All right, so I will start with talking about updates to MANTIS, which is the ANS's collection database. Um, so the ANS is one of the first major collections of cultural heritage objects, whether numismatics or not, to adopt databases in the 1980s. And so there was a bespoke customized database created in the mid 1980s, I believe, um, which the curators used for cataloging the collection. Now, this database was really never intended to be public because we're well more than a decade before the World Wide Web, and there was really no intention or even the idea that the data being cataloged for the ANS's collection would ever be accessible to the public anywhere in the world. And so there are various inconsistencies and idiosyncrasies in the cataloging of the collection over the decades by curatorial staff and interns and many other people who came and worked at the ANS over the period of the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s. And sometime in the early 2000s, I believe, this DOS-based database from the 80s was migrated into FileMaker Pro, um, which is a proprietary subscription-based desktop database application. There are various limitations in FileMaker Pro, which became apparent over the years in terms of scaling it up and the general quality of the data that we were inputting into it. And so around 2015, we decided that we were going to migrate the FileMaker Pro database into an open source museum management database called Collective Access. And this is for the backend data entry of our collection. It took quite a few years to really get the gears rolling on the database migration process. So it did take quite a few years to set up the database and test it out before we really started putting any new data into it. So finally, in early 2023, we began the process of cleaning up the data department by department from our FileMaker database and importing it into Collective Access. And this process just concluded just about a month or 6 weeks ago. So it's taken over 2 years to migrate more than 600,000 records from one platform to another. A lot of the difficulty in doing this work was because the database in the 1980s wasn't designed as a relational database, so there was really no control over the names of people and places and denominations and this sort of thing that were being entered into the database. I would think of it as a 600,000 line spreadsheet that anyone could enter free text into. And so there were a lot of inconsistencies in the way names were spelled, general typos, differences in capitalization, and this sort of thing that made it very difficult for general users to be able to find what they were looking for. And in the process of migrating this data, we spent a lot of time cleaning it up and trying to make it more consistent as best as possible, especially with regard to the names of rulers, dynasties, political entities, denominations, and places, and that sort of thing. So the end product is a database that is far more usable by the public. And MANTIS, which we published in 2011 originally, and it has evolved considerably since then, is the public user interface for our collection. And the browse page for MANTIS, if you haven't seen it, consists of a large number of faceted lists that allow you to filter the search on the left-hand side, and various features for sorting the results and paging through the results and so on and so forth. So if I go and filter by the metals and decorations department, you'll see that we have over 50,000 metals. And if we expand some of these other lists, for example, the artists that show up here in this list are entered far more consistently after months of painstaking data cleanup. Some of these artists, if we click on them, we can sort, and we have five objects by this metal list. If I drill down into it, this is the page for this particular metal, and a lot of these other places and artists and organizations now link to external vocabulary systems such as Wikidata. So if you click through from our collection, this is the linked open data representation for the Medallic Art Company, which contains a lot of information about where it's located, when it was founded, how long it existed, and so on and so forth. And you can also click through into the Wikipedia article. So this is really a building block that allows us to eventually improve the user interface that you see for this page to allow us to pull in information from external sources on the web and improve the overall research context for these objects. Similarly, I have just rewritten the search page in MANTIS so that all the fields are laid out in a more logical manner, making it a little bit easier to use. So we can drill down into a department if we want to conduct our search. If we start with Greek, then any field you select here will be narrowed down based on the other fields you've selected. So if we're interested in coins from the Greek department that were minted at Crassus, we can search for that and it'll give us 14 results. So the new search interface includes lists that are restricted, but also some full text keywords. So the full text searches for places or people will allow you to find them by alternative names, if available, or names in other languages. You can also search by date range and obverse legends and types and other sort of metrical features like weight and diameter. Similarly to this, we also have a map interface which allows you to visualize geographically the entire collection of the ANS. These points represent, the blue ones represent mints, red or hordes that are associated with the collection, and orange or fine spots. So we could click on one of these mints in particular and click on it, and it will show us the objects that were minted in that place. Much like the search interface I showed you, there's the exact same search interface for the maps as well. So if you want to search specifically for the Greek department, you can do that. And if you're interested in browsing just the Seleucid dynasty coins that are in our collection, you can refine the map and it will update it with all the mints and hordes associated with the Seleucid coins in our collection. And you can, of course, drill down further if you want to see the coins that are minted in Antioch, for example, from the Seleucid coins in the ANS collection. Now that's basically a basic start to our updates to Mantis, but I think there's going to be a lot more coming in the future. So I'll be working on taking advantage of the better quality data that we've created through this migration process in order to create some new features that weren't really possible before. So, for example, since we have our artists are pretty well integrated with wikidata.org, that would allow us to create search interfaces that would, um, for example, enable you to find objects that were made by artists who were living in Paris from 1890 to 1900. So um, that's something we can't actually do right now because we don't store that biographical information about the artists or the rulers within our own database, but we can draw on that information from external resources in order to make our own collections database more useful to researchers. I guess I'll turn my attention now to some updates in numisma.org. So as Peter mentioned, we have recently published um, monograms. Actually, it's not working right now, so I'm just going to have to skip it. So none of the monogram images are showing up here, which is kind of frustrating. I might be able to fix it. So in the meantime, I would like for Peter to take over and actually give some background on the monograms themselves in HRC while I try to fix the image.
Yeah, no problem.
Issue.
As always with anything technical, there are on occasion some issues. So Ethan, would you mind? Yeah, thanks. I'll share my screen again and take us back to HRC. So, and actually both HRC and Corpus Numorum, which is a project that is run by our German colleagues Ulrike Peter and Vladimir Stolba. So both with Corpus Numorum, which focuses primarily on this part of the world, you can see on the map. So this is this northwestern corner of Asia Minor, as well as Thrace and up into Bulgaria. Their project has, over time, cataloged and created typologies of coinages from the ancient world from this part of the world. And as part of their project, they also developed a monograms repository, much like we did, in fact, with HRC. So each one of the component parts of Hellenistic roll coinages, such as Pella, Seleucid coins online, Ptolemaic coins online, and ticketed and so forth, does have the ability to search through the types by symbols. And as many of you know, Hellenistic coinages particularly tended to be rather chatty in the sense that there were a lot of words that would appear on the reverse of the coins associated with rulers, but at the same time, there were various symbols as well as these monograms. And in many cases, we still don't really understand what these monograms served, or the function of them. In some cases, it's fairly clear that this is an abbreviation of a personal name, and this person perhaps was a magistrate overseeing the production of that particular series of coins. But overall, in the aggregate, we don't have a cohesive explanation for every monogram everywhere that it appears. So what we were hoping to do initially was create a way to search through all of these various monograms and associate then the various coins that link into that or that have that particular monogram represented on them. And in some cases, a similar monogram might appear in different places at different times. And so the ability to bring together all of this in one location has proved, at least in our project with HRC, rather beneficial. But At the same time, because we and our German colleagues were producing this sort of mirror, or at least these two repositories, we decided that it would be useful to try to combine them. And that is essentially what we've done. And we're using Nomisma then as a portal. So just to show you here in HRC, there is an ability, in fact, to search through monograms. So if you look at a monogram, you might be able to see various letter component parts. So when I and Ulrika went through these various monograms, we were throwing the net rather wide, and so trying to be far more inclusive than exclusive in terms of the letters we might see. So, for example, you might see a Greek mu here, you might also see a delta, you see an omicron, you see an omega, and so forth. So whatever letters you might see here, if you then click on these tabs here, so say you see a delta, you see an omicron, see a mu, and then refine search, that will then bring up all of the various monograms that have those letter component parts that we were able to identify. And because bigger, that database that focuses on the topology, that focuses on Bactrian and Indo-Greek, has monograms that appear in Koroshti, we also then have this ability to search through those by these tabs here. So, again, if you then click on one of these monograms, it will, in many cases, then link into the coinages that are associated with that particular monogram, which in this case is and then if you click on that, it will take you to the type page for that particular type of Antigonid coin produced by Demetrius Poliorcetes. So Ethan, are you good to go at this point, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna now stop sharing and turn it back to Ethan.
Yeah, so as Peter summarized, we've created monograms for the various Hellenistic royal coinages projects, the Seleucid Ptolemaic, Coins Online, Bigger, and also the Corpus Nemorum project. And one of the strategies we took with Hellenistic royal coinages, because we had a 3-year grant-funded project from the NEH, is that we were going to go ahead and draw the monograms as they were published in each of the individual books that the digital typologies were based on. So we drew all of the monograms and created IDs for them. But what we didn't do was go through manually and try to disambiguate duplicates across Hellenistic royal coinages, because it would have been too time consuming at the time. So our strategy was to take the images that we created, which are originally vector graphics, SVG files, and we took those and we combined them with the monograms that were drawn for Corpus Nemorum for Thracian coinages. And those were all converted from SVG files into JPEG files. And then Karsten Tolle, a computer scientist who is also on the Numisma Scientific Committee at the University of Frankfurt, he ran those through a computer vision software application to look for patterns in these files, and then group them accordingly according to potential matches. And so the software then created lists or groupings of potential matches, which were then vetted by Peter and Ulrika. And then once they manually verified whether these computational suggestions were matches or not, then we reduced the total number of monograms across these collections from about 4,500 distinct ones to 4,000. So there were some duplicate of monograms across different data sets. So one of the weaknesses in having all these duplicate monograms is that if you were searching for a particular monogram in Seleucid Coins Online, um, that search interface would only search the coins that were Seleucid within that kind of silo. But if you can create a new ID which links to all the other duplicates, that allows you to then join all these disparate data sets together and then query these monograms across the whole of Greek coinage, or at least the Greek coinage that we have aggregated between Hellenistic and Thracian coinage. So we then created a new set of monogram URIs in numisma.org, or IDs. So now we have 4,000 in numisma. And if we filter just for the symbols that are published in numisma, we will then get basically a brief search interface that allows you to drill down by the letters that are visible in the monogram. So we can select a couple of symbols and restrict the results. And here you see there are now 236, which may contain these two Greek letters. And if we click on one of these monograms, it will then show us a list of types that are associated with the monogram and the mints where those monograms had occurred. I think 1830 is a really good example. Let me see. Yeah. So 1830 is a really great example because this is a particular monogram that appears on Ptolemaic Seleucid coins and in Corpus Numorum. And this will give us a much broader picture of the distribution of this monogram in different mints, as well as at being found in various hoards or find spots, individual finds. We can also draw network graphs showing the relationship between this monogram 1830 and other monograms that appear on the same types. So we can see that this monogram 2553 has a really strong relationship to 1830 because the line is thicker. So there are more occurrences of these two in conjunction with each other than, say, one of these out on the furthest edge. If we scroll down some more, we can find that this monogram appears on 28 types, and this allows us to drill down into Pella or some other project. So we can go, from the numisma ID for this monogram into Seleucid Coins Online, or Newell's Demetrius Polyorchides, or what have you. So that's one such example that we have. I think that there's a lot more research potential for these monogram relations, since this is really a new area of research for Greek numismatics, where before we implemented this within linked open data technology, it just simply wasn't possible to aggregate monogram relationship data at this scale. So it's now possible to visualize and analyze the relationships of these monograms across a much larger data set, and that may give us some clues as to what the monograms actually mean when you view them within a greater context of the relationships they have with other monograms. So some of these may mean they may represent mint marks, or they may represent something other pertaining to the authority or the intention of circulation in a particular area. So there's a lot more that can be done with this. Another more recent advancement in numisma is the implementation of a new map-based interface for querying the types and the objects that we have integrated into numisma.org. So as Peter was saying, most of the projects associated with numisma so far are Greek and Roman, but there are some other medieval and modern European projects that are being published according to numisma principles. We now have, I think it's maybe 200,000 total typologies integrated into numisma, and over 500,000 coins, physical coins that are connected to those typologies or connected to coin hoards as well. And so before now, most of the only real avenue for interoperating or querying those coins or types were in the individual silos of ochre or Hellenistic royal coinages or something. So if you were really interested in Rome, the Roman economy of the late Republic and early imperial period, you couldn't really query across both crow and ochre simultaneously. You would have to conduct your research in both platforms and then try to mash the results of your queries together in order to perform analysis. But now, since we're able to join all of these in numisma, and we have a wealth of data integrated into it, this allows us to create some new analytical interfaces. So this is something that I've been working on and off for a few months, and it's now published online. It's not really absolutely complete. I plan on employing some more features into it, but right now, this is what it's capable of doing, which is I can formulate a query. Let's say, for example, I'm interested in displaying the geographic distribution of the Seleucid Empire as a whole. So if I restrict my beginning query just to Greek numismatics, that reduces the lists just to Greek entities. That makes it a little bit easier to sort through the data that we have aggregated. So if I do Greek first and then select a state authority, then this will show me all of the corporate entities in the numisma that have issued coinages. So we'll go down to the Seleucid Empire, and then I'll just click Update Map. And if I wait for a moment, it will update the map with blue points for all of the mints where Seleucid coins were minted, with different bubbles of different sizes, indicating the overall volume of production. And then the red points are different hoards in which Seleucid mints appear. So many of these hoards are from coinhoards.org, which is initially a publication of the inventory of Greek coin hoards, but now recently includes 600 more hoards from Asia Minor, from Andy Meadows' Change Project. So if we click around this particular hoard, this is Change Hoard number 19, which was added into numisma just several months ago through coinhoards.org. You can see below that it'll automatically populate with the types that were found according to the query, and I can page through these, and it'll display images if there are any. I can also drill down into a particular mint. So the mint of Perium produced 32 types, and if I click the view button, it will update the results down here. So now I can just page through all 32 coin types that were found in Perium that were minted by the Seleucid Empire. Now, one other pretty interesting thing here that I've implemented is that you can do comparative analyses of more than one query. So if we're interested in the distribution of mints for the Seleucid Empire as compared to the Ptolemaic Empire, oops, let's try that again. I can set up two different queries to compare, and I can change the colors of the points to make it a little more obvious which one is which. If I click update map, then now you can see that the blue points are the mints for the Ptolemaic Empire, and the red are the mints for the Seleucids. We can switch this from comparing mints to comparing hordes, for example. And you can see from this this point that many of the hordes that contain Ptolemaic coins were within Egypt, some on the Levant as well. So there's quite a lot of Ptolemaic and Seleucid coins found in hordes in the Levant. And then you'll see quite a large representation of Seleucid hordes sprinkled throughout Thrace, and you don't really see so much Ptolemaic material up in Thrace. So you can also switch from querying coin types to querying objects as well. So the object queries will give you slightly different count or distribution. And if you click on one of these bubbles, if I go back to mints anyway, taking a little while. So if I go back and it says that there are 15 coins from Antioch and Persis, which are Seleucid, and then it should pop up below. And most of these are coins from the Bibliothèque Nationale. And we can click through to any of these coins to the Bibliothèque Nationale's website. We also get some physical dimensions, diameters, weights. You can click on the images as well. Some of them you can zoom into. And importantly, you can also download CSV. So if you click on this button, you'll download the 15 coins from Antioch and Persis that were Seleucid. And of course, you can click on this button for CSV for all sorts of queries. So if you wanted to download all of the coins that were Seleucid, you can download that in one giant CSV file for further analysis. And that CSV file will contain all of the information that you see here on the HTML page. So it'll include the weights, find spots if available, and hordes and that sort of thing. So this is really just phase one of creating a new sort of interface for manipulating queries of all the coins and coin types that are found and harvested within Numisma at the moment. So this is yeah, this is just version 1 of what I plan on doing over the course of the summer. So I think that's pretty much it from me. Peter, do you have anything else that you want?
Yeah. There are a couple of other developments that we are working on for the near future, one of which is to expand the typology that we have in Ptolemaic Coins Online. Ptolemaic Coins Online at the moment is based on Kathy Lorber's publication and typology of Ptolemaic coins. And the first half of this in 2 volumes was published a number of years ago. And I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the second part of all of this has just this week or last week now been published as well. So this is now a 3-volume set of part 2, Ptolemy 5 through Cleopatra the 7, in 3 volumes. And the typology that appears in this part 2, we will, over the course of the next year or two, start digitizing and then ultimately add to Ptolemaic coins online. So we will then ultimately have the full run of Ptolemaic typology down through Cleopatra the 7th. So at the moment, we only have about half of the Ptolemies, and of course, we'll add more. And I just want to, mention as well that all of these projects, of course, are works in progress. We are constantly working on various parts of them, updating things, trying to fix errors. And of course, if you notice any errors in any of these, please do alert us to that, because we're more than happy to make corrections if need be, if errors are brought to our attention. There are also a number of other projects that we are not directing necessarily, but that we're involved in to some degree. And I want to bring your attention to these as well, one of which is a project which also is part of this large change project that Andy Meadows has been working on for a number of years. And this was a project for which he received funding in part from a number of sources, including the European Research Council. But the site that you see here, greekcoinage.org/arch, is an attempt to create a universal, essentially, typology for ancient Greek coinage. And as a starting point, they're bringing together a number of different online resources, including our Hellenistic coinage, our Hellenistic royal coinage, as well as Corpus Numorum Online, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and Iris, which was a French project, Bibliothèque Nationale, as well as Moneda Iberica, which is a project out of Spain that is organized and run by some of our Spanish colleagues. And here I just want to congratulate again those who run Moneda Iberica, including Peripau Ripollès, who is a former summer seminar visiting scholar, as well as a recipient of our Huntington Award. But Moneda Iberica received our Collier Prize for 2024. So this is a substantial prize that we offer for publications, including digital publications in ancient coinage. And the Collier Prize Committee decided to award Moneda Iberica the Collier Prize for 2024. So, and this really has to do with just the enormous scope of Moneda Iberica, which focuses primarily on Iberian coinage, but also just the quality of the data and what they've been able to do with this site. So I would encourage all of you to check that out. I also, since Alan Stahl is with us today, I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that there is a Byzantine project that has been underway for a little bit, an attempt to create an online resource for Byzantine typology. And Alan, do you want to provide an update on where things are at the moment with that?
Well, we've been working with Numisma, and I think we agree on names of denominations finally, things like that. Yeah, our project is led by Elena Baldi, our postdoctoral Byzantinist, and she has a whole group. We're working with a group in Italy and with Dunbarton Oaks basically now, and to some extent with Oxford, to put together the type of database for Byzantine coins that you've already got for Roman and Roman Republic, etc. We're also working with another group in Italy on, I think it's being called Numista. No, Nomista. There's too many gnome word names out there, which is going to pull together Greek coin, Byzantine coin hoards. Again, working with numisma so that everything sort of fits together in the end.
Very good. And while we have you here, are there any updates on Flame, your other project?
Yeah. Something we've been working on for quite a while now is our discovery, and it's not a discovery, certainly not to anyone who looks at numismatic distributions, that once we start mapping all the finds, Flame maps finds throughout now the world, we've certainly stretched well into Asia, from 320 coins minted from 325 to 750 to look at the transition from antiquity into the Middle Ages. What we have discovered, not to real surprise, is that we have a lot of finds for Northern Europe, especially, of course, Britain with its portable antiquities scheme, and we are very sparse on the ground in Greece and Turkey, which is the heartland of the Byzantine Empire. So we had a workshop in Athens in January, bringing together a group of graduate students from Turkish and Greek universities with some specialists to try to get at this problem. And we have been very fortunate to get funded by Princeton's Humanities Council to hire 4 of them, 2 Greek, 2 Turkish, for the next year to put in finds, many of which are unpublished. They will go to museums. We discovered, and this will be useful to people who work in all periods, that a lot of master's theses in Turkey are reports of coin finds, especially from specific excavations, and they, by law, are all publicly available. You just have to know where to look for them and be able to read Turkish. Well, we now have 2 people working full-time on that for the next year, and we hope to pull together one of these tables with the ANS to bring what we found next May, when we all get together finally, to the public.
Very good. Thank you, Alan. And just so you know what we're talking about, this is Alan's Framing the Late Antique and Early Medieval Economy project, and I'm just showing the page, the landing page for it here on the screen. So if you're not aware of this project, or if you haven't checked it out, please do. So at this point, more than happy to open it up for questions if anybody has any questions. I did see that there were 1 or 2 questions in the chat. One from Daniel Wolf, which I think Ethan was able to answer in terms of the implementation or not, as it is the case of AI. Bruce Bartlett, you also had a question. Do you want to just ask that?
Yes, I was wondering if the database, the characters in your database are available in a format other than SVG that could be used in a old-fashioned offline document, like Word or something like that.
SVG can be used in Word, so it's a vector graphic that you can just put into a Word document.
Okay, I see.
Like, it's an infinitely scalable thing, like a font. So yeah, it'll print at perfect resolution if you want to.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and here I also just want to underscore that everything that we do in terms of these online resources at the ANS, it is open source, and our intention is to create resources that have data that you can download in whatever configuration you'd like. So those there are data download options, for example, with CSV and other types of formats on nearly every page on these resources. So if you look for them, you'll be able to find those little icons to download the data and then work with it or reconfigure it however you'd like. So again, this is meant to be open source and usable in whatever configuration. Franklin Noel, you had a question as well. Would you like to ask that, or just have me read it?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on the difference between the find spot and the hoard, because it looks like there's a lot of overlap. Obviously, where a hoard is found, you're gonna. I'm not sure what the different criteria are for each of those filters.
The find spot corresponds to single finds, either excavation coins or metal detector finds or some other individual find. The hoard points correspond just to coin hoards. So that's the distinction between find spot as an individual find and a hoard is has a find spot, but it pertains only to the hoard.
Okay, thank you.
And Daniel Wolf was also asking if there was a course to be offered teaching all these database features. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment, and this is something that pertains to MANTIS, and as Ethan demonstrated a little bit earlier, is trying to make a lot of the functionality of these sites a little bit more accessible than they have been. So Ethan's reconfiguration of the search function for MANTIS, for example, is just to make it more obvious and a little bit more accessible. And we're hoping to do the same thing with some of these other sites as well. So at some point, hopefully in the near future, a lot of what Ethan was demonstrating on Nomitsma should be perhaps reconfigured to some degree to make it a little bit more intuitive, let's say, for non-specialists. But at the same time, I think that we certainly could try to set up something where we could walk people through, say, little videos or something of the sort to explain some of this functionality and how to use it. Do you want to add anything to that, Ethan?
No, not really. We've talked about filming videos, just introductory videos about how to use these interfaces.
Yeah.
So that's something we could do, is a series of tutorials, video tutorials on how to use them.
Yeah. And if you have any questions about any of this in the meantime, don't hesitate to write to us and ask us questions about this. And in the meantime, are there any other questions from the audience at this moment? All right. Well, since we are at the top of the hour, I will thank you again for your attention this afternoon and wish all of you a very wonderful weekend.